topic was really hard for me to advocate on. By a show of hands, who would say that the brain dead are alive? I mean, it has dead, which is a full. Yeah, okay, well that's okay. We got started out. So if you think about, in America, what do we like to watch awful horror movies about? For some odd reason, we love whenever people come back from life and then try to kill other living people. And if you look at that from an arts perspective of why we're so intrigued by it, is that because it's not something that's definite. It's not something that's set in stone. That actually, for the major written assignment, my team is doing how, there's so many definitions of life, but we're doing how there's so many definitions of death, and it's not one static thing and how dynamic it is. So, that we need to think about, like I just said, that there's so many definitions of life and how many ways and on how many different levels that we think about life, and that it could, it's applicable to this in a sense too, that these individuals who are brain dead are legally dead, but we need to think, okay, are they dead from a biological perspective? I am the social sciences advocate, so I've been doing all the kind of like legal things in the group. So starting off, the Uniform Determination of Death Act, it's the legal term used. So that's used in court to declare homicide. It's used in everything from abortion to whether out to rule homicide. It's our legal standard of death. And I'm sure you've seen it. It's so the irreversible cessation of circulatory and respiratory functions, or the irreversible cessation of all functions of the entire brain, including the brain stem. So to be legally declared brain dead, there needs to be no neurological electric activity. So Ganley, Musselwhite, and Trassat, they articulated on the different types of death so that we have many different levels. First being somatic death, and that is your whole body. So the whole body dies, like we were just talking about bees. The whole bee dies, not just the wing, not just the mouth. All of bee is gone. And that's what the legal standpoint is, that it's somatic death, whole body death. But I don't know if you guys remember that whenever we were talking about how small can we get of the unit of life and what's living, remember we drew it up on the board and we kept on going further down and down and down. This is exactly what they did, but they did it for death. So going down to organ death. So we talked about our organ donation. So somebody dies, they have somatic whole body death, but their heart's still beating because they're hooked up to a ventilator. So the heart's still alive. If you take the heart out, there's been some cases that it will still beat just from the electrical buildup still there. So if we move further down, you have tissue death. So say, somebody gets a pressure ulcer in the medical field and it's a non-healing wound and it becomes necrotic and dies. Their foot, their tissue is dead, but they are not dead. They do not have organ death. They do not have somatic death, but their foot is technically dead. Going down to cell death. I don't even know how many cells die in your body every single day, but it's good because we have apoptotic cycles in our cells, so that's programmed cell death. So your cells have to die for you to stay living, some of them. And then organelle death. All the way down to an organelle, a mitochondria, a chloroplast, that you can even go further and it's not functioning, it's not alive or working correctly. You can have a protein, that this is the smallest that they classified, but if you heat up a protein, it's going to denature, unwind, it won't work anymore, it won't carry its code, it won't do its function. But if you look at this hierarchy, where does life start? Where does death start? Where does life end? And where does death end? So Dr. Sam Parna out of Southampton University of the United Kingdom conducted this, it's the biggest study of its kind. And the team looked into consciousness after death. And this is consciousness after legal declared death. So, on your death certificate, you have a time of death. and that is they're looking at consciousness from that point on. And it's really large. It covered 2,000 people who had suffered cardiac heart arrest. And that in the study, 40% who survived, who were able to talk about their experience, 40% of them said that they were aware or had some sort of conscious during the time that they were clinically dead. That some of them stated that they didn't know what specifically happened, that they couldn't, write up a script of what happened, but they knew that something happened, that there was some retained consciousness of that state where they were supposed to be dead, clinically, legally. Dr. Samparna says, contrary to perception, death is not a specific moment, but a potentially reversible process that occurs after any severe illness or accident that causes the heart, lungs, and brain to cease functioning. So the team looked at this as death not being stagnant, not being just the time that they give on the clock, but as a process. And that as we go on in our medical advances, that this is a process that, can we start reversing this? I was talking about apoptosis in our cells, in our life cycle, that, if we have this known knowledge of these programmed cell death, and we know what genes are working, can we start reversing that? Can we start targeting it and reverting back to life or fully functioning life? So the Lazarus phenomenon, in the Bible, Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. Heard it? So the Journal of the Royal Society of Medicine published an article of actually the medical account of legitimizing the Lazarus phenomenon seen in. And it is the delayed return of spontaneous circulation. So circulation of the blood stopped, and then it went back, circulating again after CPR. And this was first reported in 1982, and that in this study that 17 patients, so 45% of all that they looked at, achieved complete neurological recovery. So having their blood stop flowing in their body, and then years later, they're neurologically fine. And there are a lot of theories to this. One of them is being that the electrocardio, I don't want to get the words wrong, the electric current in the heart has a buildup in the pressure, and that kind of works as, whenever they shock, kind of an artificial, just a naturally occurring start back up to the heart. So in other cases of coming back to life, it takes us into, not biblical times. That Sam Hemming, I don't know if any of you have heard of her, but she was from the UK. She was 22 years old. This came from Daily Life so just, our Sunday Times paper. And that she spent 19 days in a coma, and that she was declared brain dead. So imagine this. Your cousin or whatever, Sam Hemming, she's in a coma 19 days, and the doctors are like, okay, well, it's been 19 days, we're going to pull the plug. So the nurse walks by with this cold wipe, and as she's walking, it brushes her toe, and her toe twitches. And somebody was as you're going to pull the plug, it's okay, well, wait, maybe you shouldn't do this. So they backed up, didn't pull out the plug, and that is her walking. So not only did she walk, it was because she wiggled her big toe. This is a quote from her, somebody who has, was declared brain dead. And she said, my talking is fine, and I just want to get better now. Before the accident, I wanted to be a solicitor, and that ambition hasn't changed. I still want a career in the law. So she gave her own testimony that she came back from the dead, essentially. She was declared legally brain dead. She had a death certificate. She had a time of death. And then there are a ton of cases. I was so surprised. This comes out of, it was actually in the United States. The Washington Post reported it, that this is George Pickering. And imagine this, so you're in the scenario that George is in a coma, brain dead, and they say, okay, Mr. Pickerington, we have to pull the plug on your son. And George actually went haywire, and he threatened to kill all of them if he unplugged his son. But in that whole debauchery and the whole scenario that went down, that George squeezed his father's hand multiple times. So that they didn't pull the plug, and because of all of that, that George is now healthy and fully recovered. They say that their bond is fully inseparable. And I thought that was sweet. So, in conclusion, you don't have to answer this, but my biggest question left me with, do doctors make mistakes, or are these miracles happening? That in our arts, in our humanities, we see so much focused on our time with death and running out of time and coming back from the dead and being scared and both fascinated by it, and that is it because that we don't really have that good of an understanding of what death is. You want to hear my references?